Well, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Thank you for joining us. This is Carolyn Frazier. I am Carolyn Frazier, and I am the chair for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee for the Henry County Chamber. And I want to welcome everyone to the second installation of our Chamber's Town Hall meetings. And today we are going to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion. On our panel this week, we have Joseph Henning, who is the president of the Henry County Chamber. We have Dr. Mary Elizabeth Davis, who is the superintendent of our Henry County school system. We have Sherry Matthews, who is our county manager. And we have Josh Fenn with the Henry County Development Authority. He is the executive director. So I want to say good morning and thank you to you. Thank you to all of you for being on our panel today. Just a little bit about me. I'm the chair of the newly formed committee here in the county, and I am currently a financial advisor with Edward Jones, and I have an office right here in McDonough at the corner of Keys Ferry and Highway 155, right across from the Board of Education. I was pleased to be asked to work on this new committee for the Chamber. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, we work to promote the value and the power of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our committee, and we want to support and develop talent and resources and business opportunities. We want to elevate minority businesses in the area, in our community, and employees. Our landscape is changing. The marketplace is increasingly global, and there is a good business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we've got work to do. So we are going to have a panel discussion today. I want to remind everyone, you can submit questions. This is a conversation. We don't want to air grievances. We don't want to place blame. This is all about let's have some conversations and let's move the county forward and make some positive strides. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Joe.
Thank you, Carolyn. And I just, a quick shout to Gary. There's some feedback I think that's occurring. I don't know if it's on my end, but I don't know if there's any way that you can check out where that. And I just, a quick shout to Gary. There's some feedback I think that's occurring. I don't know if it's on my end, but I don't know if there's any way that you can. It's like an echo canyon. I'm going to mute my speaker while I. Okay, yes. If I turn the speaker down and don't get the back piece, I don't have a microphone. So Carolyn, thank you for moderating today. And I want to thank the panelists. This is a great series that we're looking at for the summer. And microphone. So Carolyn, thank you for moderating today. And I want to thank the panelists. This is a great series that we're looking at for the summer. So anyway, I'm going to start and hope that I don't get too distracted off of the echoing. We live in a complex and intersectional world where diversity shaped by the globalization and technological advances form the fabric of modern society. And notwithstanding this interconnectedness, there's a growing polarization, both in physical and in digital worlds, fueled by identity politics and the resurgence of nationalist ideas. In this era of globalization, diversity in the business environment is about more than gender, race, and ethnicity. It now includes employees with diverse religious and political beliefs, education, socioeconomic backgrounds, sexual orientation, cultures, and even disabilities. Companies are discovering that by supporting and promoting a diverse and inclusive workplace, they are gaining benefits that go beyond the optics. Business has the transformative power to change and to contribute to a more open, diverse, and inclusive society. And we can only accomplish this by starting from within our organizations. Many of us know intuitively that diversity is good for business. And we can only accomplish this by... Thank you, Gary. Yes, I did. Companies are discovering that by supporting and promoting a diverse and inclusive workplace, they are gaining benefits that go beyond the optics. Business has the transformative power to change and contribute to a more open, diverse, and inclusive society. We can only accomplish this by starting from within our organizations, and the case for establishing a truly diverse workforce at all organizational levels grows more compelling each year. The moral argument is weighty enough, but the financial impact, as proven by multiple studies, makes this a no-brainer. The urgency and push for diversity and inclusion reflects the demographic shifts in the workforce. As more women, racial and ethnic minorities, LGBTQ individuals, veterans, and people with disabilities enter the workforce, organizations are challenged to find new ways to create a more dynamic workplace, one that fosters engagement and innovation and drives performance. There is also a growing generational gap to consider. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, by the year 2025, millennials will make up 75% of the workforce. Many millennials are foreign-born, biracial, and LGBTQ, and they define diversity differently from previous generations. For them, diversity is an individual mix of unique experiences, identities, ideas, and opinions more so than any one single trait. There is a growing recognition that in order for diversity and inclusion to be successful, it must be a top to bottom business strategy and not just an HR program or initiative. In a recent survey conducted by Deloitte, more than 69% of executives rate D&I as an important issue. And the proportion of executives who cited inclusion as a priority has risen by 32% compared to a similar survey conducted just 6 years ago. Last fall, the Henry County Chamber Board of Directors approved several new initiatives for the organization. And one of those was the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. Chaired by today's moderator, Carolyn Fraser, the group began working immediately to identify partners and opportunities with whom the business community could work. Several meetings were held with similar organizations, including Georgia Women's Chamber and the Georgia Hispanic Chamber. The topic of diversity was highlighted during this past spring at the Women's Empowerment Summit. In March, the Henry County Chamber held an initial joint meeting with the Georgia Hispanic Chamber. And then the pandemic came to town. The systemic issue of social injustice and inequity became more profound as more and more citizens in the Black and Latinx community were disproportionately struck with the virus COVID-19, and tensions grew. In the first 6 months of this year, too many victims of racial violence became household names: George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, James Scurlock, Nina Pop, Sean Monterosa, Tony McDade, Rayshard Brooks, Robert Fuller. And unfortunately, that list goes on. Protests were held around the world. In some cases, protests were peaceful. And many, however, more death and property destruction followed. In a recent Atlanta poll of nearly 1,000 business, political, and civic leaders in the region, and conducted by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, nearly 9 in 10 of the respondents said they want action, specifically speedy passage by Georgia lawmakers on a hate crimes law. Currently, Georgia joins South Carolina, Arkansas, and Wyoming as the 4 states in our nation with no protections for victims of hate crimes. 46 of those states do have those protections. Almost half of those responding to the poll believe now is the time for real change. While we are outraged and frustrated, we should also be heartened by growing signs our country may finally be at a tipping point for real change, said one member of the party. More than ever, the work requires fearless, thoughtful, and strong leaders who can identify appropriate ways to help our community eliminate racism, advance equality, and move forward. As a society, we are at a turning point. These protests and these conversations are the culmination of years of anger and frustration about systemic injustice and economic disparities, particularly targeting disenfranchised communities. The circumstances of a child's birth, the zip code of residence, the family structure, and the color of someone's skin should not be the determining factor in his or her future. This month, the boards of the Henry County Chamber and the Convention and Visitors Bureau have approved efforts to affect change within Henry County. They have approved our partnerships with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Georgia Chamber, and several of our peers throughout Georgia and the country to address these issues and to work toward equity and social justice. But these words require action, and a simple statement is not enough today. From the board of directors to our team at the Chamber, we are proud of the diverse perspectives that are provided from our diverse composition. The Chamber is committed to facilitated conversations with Henry County residents, employers, and visitors to build on these diverse strengths to drive our economic future. We look forward to partnering with any organization that is interested in working with us, and we have already begun these efforts. This week, the Board of Leadership Henry is meeting to discuss improvements and recommendations to the program, and some of these conversations will include incorporating diversity dialogue into that curriculum. Next Monday, our board's chair-elect, Lincoln Parks, will kick off the first of our Community Dialogue book discussion series. While launched virtually due to the continuing COVID pandemic, Lincoln will have guests representing law enforcement and religion to discuss Malcolm Gladwell's Talking to Strangers. We appreciate Story on the Square in McDonough for partnering with us and being the exclusive retailer for the program. We encourage other organizations, educational institutions, and faith-based groups to join us in these dialogues. We must all work together to listen, to learn, and to act to make Henry County the choice for residents, employers, and visitors. There is so much more to do, but together we will make it happen. The key word is together. So I thank you all for joining us. That was just a little statement that I wanted to put together to put out there. I want to have a conversation around it. But I'd like to start with Sherry, just because I know we've had a bit of conversation around Leadership Henry and implementing some of those traits in that. And so where do you see us taking Leadership Henry as an opportunity to affect that change?
Absolutely. And certainly before I get started, Joe, thank you and the Chamber for having this conversation. I certainly believe that the time is certainly now for us to talk through where we are as a community, but more specifically to act now. And I have three key takeaways: listen, learn, and act, that I will run with from this point forward. But I do agree that we've got to have the conversation. So Leadership Henry is a vital tool within the Chamber's toolbox, which I have the pleasure of serving on the board, but also being a class or previous class member of Leadership Henry. And one of the things that we've talked about over the course of the last couple of months is how do we change the program? How do we make it where leaders are not only there just for the program days, but they're more interactive in what's going on, but also talking to us about things that are truly happening in our community. And I think that was the focus for us, revisiting the how we look at Leadership Henry. Diversity, inclusion, and equity are three terms that we've heard a lot, but do we really understand what diversity means? Do we really understand what inclusiveness means? And do we understand what equity means? And I think Joe is absolutely right. It's not just a matter of black and white. There are so many layers that go into diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's one of the things that we're going to push through this upcoming class, is how do we focus on creating leaders that understand the importance of those three terms. I think that our board is definitely on board for making sure that we share that information, but also hearing from the leaders. I think we have a very strong class that's coming in, lots of opinions that we're definitely going to enjoy having some conversations, but I really, really, truly believe that this upcoming class is really going to change how we function as Leadership Henry, and how the board will start to navigate through changing what Leadership Henry really means. People are invited in and people are accepted as part of Leadership Henry because we've identified them as leaders in our community or individuals who have the potential to get to a leadership role. And I think we can all agree that's part of this panel, that we've all been in positions, or we're currently in positions, that we have to learn how to adjust to the different behaviors, the different opinions, and believe it or not, that's all of the diversity, that's the inclusion, that's the equity. And so those are things that we are hopeful that we will push with our new incoming class of 2021, that there is definitely a focus, there's definitely a time for us to have a conversation now. And as Joe has said, we've got to listen first, we've got to learn, and then we've got to act from there. And I agree, Joe, we can do it together.
Thank you. Thank you. Carolyn, I want to call on you, and I hope I don't put you on the spot, but you did talk a bit about the DEI committee and some of those efforts. And can you walk us through a little bit about what you all are focusing on, what you might be looking at for the next 6 months, but then into the next year in that? And I think a lot of it obviously has changed. A lot of what we've looked at the chamber has changed from what we approved as a program of work last fall based on the pandemic, and now really pushing DEI to a higher level internally than we had previously had it listed at. And so can you share some of your experience and some of where you want to see this committee go?
I'm sure, Joe. So one of the things that our very first meeting we talked about was the importance of the census and how many people, especially in minority communities, have different feelings about the census, and there's a certain level maybe of distrust, and so a lot of people don't participate and don't really understand that the participation is tied directly to the resources that are available to us in our local community. And so we want to encourage everyone and have started partnering with other organizations, because there are a lot of local organizations that are promoting the census. And so we want to encourage everyone to participate in the census so that we're counted, so that we can get all that's available to us. And so that's in the immediate, like here throughout until the census closes, we want everybody to participate in the census. And then we also started working in terms of trying to truly put our finger on the numbers in terms of, you know, in our community today in Henry County, because as I said, the landscape is changing. And so there are a lot more diverse owned businesses and diverse employees here today than there were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And so we want to try to capture the most accurate information, the most accurate and up-to-date information in terms of, you know, what businesses are here that are defined, you know, as diverse owned or diverse run. What are our numbers looking like, and try to tackle how we can best support.
Wonderful, wonderful. I look forward to working with you in that group. That's it's definitely as I've noticed the last couple of weeks, an overwhelming undertaking, but I know that the partnerships and that we have within the community and the great leadership we have will get that done. Josh, can I call on you for a little bit of a background on what the diversity of our, especially the manufacturing area, but some of the diversity of the makeup of our business community looks like globally and internationally?
Thanks, Joe, and good morning. Appreciate you putting this panel together in this discussion. You know, within our industrial community, luckily for Henry County, we've got a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 firms, global firms that have multiple locations throughout the country, who have really brought in those practices into our community on diversity. And, you know, one of the great things, and if you are a business owner and you do have HR professionals and looking to gain that knowledge, let me mention our local SHRM chapter that's here in Henry County. That's something the Development Authority supports very strongly, not just, you know, by verbal support. We put financial resources behind that chapter. I know the chamber does as well too. But those HR professionals do share the best practices so that our HR professionals throughout the county and also region, because we do have some out of county HR members in that group, really take advantage of lessons learned, what works, what doesn't, new ideas that are coming into the marketplace to help make sure that your workforce are not only meeting the goals, but you're growing your team members, which I think is very important. You know, given the opportunities to advance, to go earn it, to, you know, get that promotion, to move ahead and set that standard. So I really think there's some great opportunities that go forward with that. The Development Authority will continue to encourage that. But we also, you know, whether it's this topic or COVID-19 response, we really relied heavily on our corporate partners that we work with to help us broaden our perspective to get ideas and best practices that we may not be thinking of.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to run over to the most senior member of this foursome right now and ask Dr. Davis, one of the best practices is a committed CEO in anything that they do. And watching you over the past year, I can say without a doubt, you probably have to be the most committed and passionate CEO that I see in Henry County. And how do you do it? But how does that help with you affecting any type of change within the school district?
Well, Joe, that was quite the setup that I certainly don't believe I've earned. But I do want to start by just, first of all, thanking Carolyn for facilitating and moderating for us today. Carolyn, I think both of our hearts right now are with the Luella High School graduating class. And I know as a school council member of Luella High School, you would love to be giving virtual air hugs to our graduates. So what a special moment that's happening for our Henry County seniors this week. And then Joe, I do want to thank you for this panel, but particularly for elevating the topic of our conversation today. Of course, it is a vital topic in communities across this country, but right now, 4 agencies convening at the same time to publicly tackle the opportunity that is presented before us, I think is a model for our state and for the nation. And I'm hoping that we have an audience around the country that realizes the step forward is a step together, and this opportunity to model that is really the way in which I believe we do this. You know, I think the role of public education is so instrumental in finding and navigating unity for communities. The role that schools need to play is to be a reflection of the priorities, aspirations, and hopes and dreams of the community in which those schools reside. So the opportunity is rich and ripe in Henry County. I actually think this could be the community that differentiates and navigates in a way that is a model. And so, you know, it's been interesting. Over the last 18, now 20 plus weeks, we have really seen that what had once been bureaucratic institutions become humanized institutions. We literally got windows into the lives of one another, colleagues, peers, students, families, employees, because we were really all navigating through a new digital platform. But those little windows into the lives of youth, into the lives of families, into the lives of our peers need to be windows that we don't close the blinds on right now. They need to be windows that we now are looking into to learn, and also using that pain as a point of reflection to grow. And I think that Henry County Schools plays a really important role in doing both of those really well. Hearing in to grow and also reflecting so we can personally be a better organization. And before COVID-19 really became a pretty poignant responsibility on our leadership plates, we had conducted a strategic plan development process as a school system. And it was very methodically constructed to seek out and listen to as many voices in the community as possible. Again, the role schools should play in a community. And so we have 8,000 unique individuals that contributed in a very methodical process to the point where we landed on a strategic plan framework for these schools, all 50 schools. And what's exciting is that it was presented on March 9th. And you know, the words on March 9th of this Henry County school system was to talk about opportunity, access, and outcomes for every kid and every student group. We know our community has aspired to kids having opportunity, access, and outcomes when they have an education through Henry County schools. Those words on March 9th were vital. Today, they are even more vital. And so I really am optimistic that the road ahead, when we as a school system talk about opportunities, access, and outcomes, you're going to hear really ambitious and urgent opportunity to talk about the opportunity for orchestra at every one of our middle schools and high schools, the access points that students who are enrolled in orchestra, and then what are the outcomes? Algebra 1 in 8th grade, AP courses in high school, gifted identification in the early years, and on it goes. Henry County Schools has only started to take the step necessary to ensure that students are learning at the highest level possible in every one of our classrooms for every one of our families. And it would not be possible, Joe, without the 4 agencies on the screen and the really hand-holding partnership with the county, with the Economic Development Authority, and with the chamber, and really this responsibility we all are unified around for our kids. So I think that, Joe, thank you. This has been a great start to a conversation, and I'm optimistic that the schools will show up and be very present to do our role to the best possible ability that any human can.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you know, that's a great point, especially with the four organizations, and that is and I have increased my library on this topic over the last 4 weeks. I can't tell you, I'm afraid to look at the credit card statement when I finally get it. But so much of that talks about having to step out of your comfort zone. And for human nature, I can't think of anybody that really enjoys stepping out of their comfort zone all the time. But to really have the frank discussions on DEI and where do we go for equity and inclusion, we're going to have those tough conversations. And that's part of that listening, learning, and acting. And so I have to thank you all, because that does help make those conversations easier when you have trusted people that you respect sitting around the table with you. In some cases hearing the same thing, in some cases having heard it from someone else. But it does really make it a lot easier for us to affect change, no matter what we're looking at for the county, when there's 4 great, strong organizations around the table to pulling in the same direction. So I want to thank you all. Carolyn, I want to turn it to you if you have any thoughts or any questions you have that, or any insights. I think, you know, you're recognized for your leadership and that. And so I want to really make sure that we've had a conversation with you as well.
My mind is going, and just personally speaking, so I'm a Black woman. I'm a Black professional woman in America, in Henry County, and I know what that's like, and I can speak to that. But I've also been made aware recently how much I have to learn, and the assumptions that I make about other people who are not like me, and who, you know, I don't know what it's like to be LGBTQ. And so I have experiences within my own group, but I'm just saying that to say there's so much to learn, and there's so much to learn factually and also experience, and making sure that I, as a Black woman, extend the same courtesy, understanding that I want to receive for groups that are not me. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate you raising that, because I think that we all, every single one of us that wants to have this conversation, needs to keep that in mind as we go forward, that those of us that are at the table want to be at the table. And we want to learn more. We want to hear more and find out more. And it's part of our growth, and that's why we're at the table. We're committed to it. But that means that we also have to form that trust and that respect with the others at the table. And we have to not homogenize all of our reactions, but we have to be respectful of those reactions. And I guess one of the key takeaways to that is, in fact, so here's a side story that kind of relates to that. as I was preparing the statements for today, and I had them done, and I asked Barbara in the office, our Director of Communications and your staff liaison to the DEI committee, if she would look at them and make sure that I didn't misspeak on anything, or at least it made sense. And so she looked at it, and she came back with, well, now, there's the wordsmithing that constantly goes on. And I think that at one point I had interpersonal, and she said, well, now they're going with intersectional, or she was kind of coaching me along. And I want to know that. I want to know where we're at with different conversations that are happening. And I want to be educated. And I have to remember then that it's not a personal attack on me if somebody's correcting that. They're just trying to help me grow. And I think that's where so many of us need to take that discomfort step is, once you rise to the CEO level that we're all sitting at, it doesn't mean you're done. And you have to remember that there's still that learning that you can do. And so when I've got great minds around me, and boy, am I blessed with a great staff and a great board, I love to learn from them. And there's so much more that I need to know that they're so willing to give me that knowledge. So I thank you for sharing that, Carolyn. Any other thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Joe, I wanted to kind of talk to that as well, because I think you've got to start with the conversation. I will tell you, last week we have a monthly staff meeting with our department heads. And, you go into a meeting prepared to accomplish A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And something was placed on me to just have a candid conversation with our team about what's going on, not only at the national level, but at the local level, at our state level, and specifically about the current events that are happening right around us. And I started the conversation asking our staff, how do you feel? Are you angry? Are you happy? Do you care? Do you not care? But there were ground rules. Everybody was entitled to their opinion. No one was to be upset because someone felt one way or the other, but it was a candid conversation. And 2.5 hours later, I not only learned new things about staff members, but I also learned about conversations that I had that staff members may have felt offended, may have felt that they were, maybe not the best conversations, but it was preparing my leadership team for the conversations they're going to have with their staff members, because it's going to come. And I don't think we can turn our cheek to, well, it's not happening to me, or it's not my children, or it's not my household, so I'm going to ignore it. So I think this is huge. And I'll say it publicly. You are a rock star for having this conversation. Many, many years ago, it would have been unheard to have the chamber, the Board of Education, the Development Authority, and the county at the same table having this conversation. And to be able to lean on the 3 other colleagues that are here to have these types of conversations, it's monumental. And I think it's just going to continue to open the door to the conversations that need to be held. Now, I'll go back to my staff meeting. Was it uncomfortable? Absolutely. Did we have tears? Absolutely. Did we have people that were upset and uncomfortable? Absolutely. But it's just the beginning of where we're headed as an organization. We have 240,000 residents in Henry County, and we are all different. And we've got to figure out, how do we come together as a group and recognize that we have differences, but we can all work together. And so I think it's important, and Carolyn, you bring up a good point. I stood in front of the staff and said, you know what? I have biases. I prejudge people. I have opinions about things. And you have to sometimes step back as the CEO and realize that you have people that work with you so that they can make you look good, but also at the same time, so they can help you navigate through what is now becoming the norm. No one knew that COVID was going to hit. No one knew that we were going to have the racial tension that we have. But as leaders within our organization, I think we have an obligation to have conversations and to talk about what's going on and what we're going to do. And I'll go back to Joe's listen, learn, and act, because I think that's where we are. So I just wanted to throw that in there because I found it very helpful to have that conversation with staff members, because it opened other conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you. I know when we were sheltering in place, we began early on doing Zoom calls daily, the entire team getting together. And for some of us that were living alone at the time, it really helped to have some social interaction of some kind because at some point the dog started ignoring me. And so I'd like to have that conversation somehow. And we had probably towards the end, there was a little social media buzz going on. And so this is 2 points to it. And so one, that one day, that meeting, which we usually had about half hour, the longest we'd ever gone was 60 minutes. We had gone over an hour and a half by all of us sharing how we felt about those posts, what we felt personally. I shared, because I'm just over a year here, and I am from the North, and I wasn't sure what Georgia was like. I had that bias in my head of what Georgia was like. But I will tell you, the first trip down here, I was corrected. I felt welcomed. I felt like there was great opportunity for this county, and that's why I am so committed to having this conversation and to make sure that we are leaving this community stronger than where it was when we arrived. And so that was some historical social media flack going on. And so, Dr. Davis, I want to ask you a bit, and I'm gonna ask all of us this, because we're all, you're about 2 or 3 years in, Sherry, you're 2 years, I'm about a year in, Josh, you're coming up on a year. So we're relative newbies here, and there's a long, obviously there was history before we all got here. I don't want to put anything pejorative to it, but what we often hear, I think, as new people to our positions is, well, that's not how we've done it, or I don't know if I can handle change. And so I just want to ask each of you, how do you handle that? How do you work through that? What are some of the tools that people can use, whether it's their place of business or their home or a community group they're in? How can they better affect change, whether it's on DEI or anything? But what are some of those tools that you use that you could impart to the community?
Yeah, that's a great segue, Joe, to talking about how, as a newcomer to a community, you really learn first, listen, learn first, but really then take seriously your charge on creating the roadmap and leading. But for me, the answer is in the community. My job is to facilitate the perspectives, the intellectual capacity, the creative capacity of a community 240,000 strong. And so to me, there is no one solo CEO or solo person who brings some type of playbook with them and starts to deploy a playbook. It really is being present, sitting side by side, or now 6 feet apart, but in one another's presence, looking one another in the eyes, listening for the words and the meaning behind the words, and finding ways that there are commonalities to build upon. And so, of course, I saw an opportunity with the Board of Education, and our Board of Education is 5 uniquely elected individuals, but actually have no individual power until they function as a whole. That's how boards are and governance is designed. And so we really spent 18 months, nearly 24 months, being reflective and rebuilding what governance meant for the Henry County school system. And we started in a room with a conference table, writing down on sticky notes, what do we believe the purpose of public education is? And what do we believe the purpose of public education needs to be in Henry County schools? Individual Post-it notes turned into posters on a wall, into finding some real clear commonalities in the beliefs of 5 individuals elected by 5 unique constituencies who need to come together and serve all youth in an entire county. Those 4 core beliefs and commitments have served as a foundation from which the school system has now built a policy and an entire comprehensive policy review, which is really intended to undo any barriers to access and opportunities, and restructure so that the school system is functioning in a way that is inclusive. And then there's the opportunity to now build a strategic plan, which I already referenced previous in the conversation. But to me, none of that comes without a real deep investment in being present and listening closely. As a school system, we have had multiple iterations of superintendent advisories, but in my first year, there were 20 unique advisories that I spent dedicated time to just trying to receive input and information. And then we have continued to form those advisories in a variety of ways. And really, again, just if you can't listen, you can't lead. And I wish there was a playbook, but the best part about it is by being present, you will hear the voices of wisdom in those that are around you. And your job is to capture it and use it to facilitate forward. And then the last thing I'll say, and I feel like I'm talking a little bit too long here, but there is tremendous responsibility when the lives of youth and the legacy of families are in your hands. I don't ever take that lightly, and I don't ever want to stop looking into the eyes of young people and being responsible for absolute, complete belief that they are world changers, that they are difference makers, and that they as an individual are about to change human society in ways that I can't imagine. And so how are schools respectful and responsive to the roles that our young people will play in our future is a grand responsibility, and one that I believe our youth are reminding us each and every day can be trusted in them. And so I really just think I get the really unique opportunity to take adult conversations and say, and now what about the kids that we're responsible for? And I think that that's what Henry County Schools in this converging moment is having the opportunity to do. And I believe great things can be on the horizon because adults really can point their energy into thinking about how do we create conditions for kids to be successful.
That's a great point, and I think I hate to say that we've had silver linings through this pandemic in the last several months, but I think, obviously this conversation is one of the wins that we get to take out of it. But I think one of the big silver linings for you and the school district, the Board of Ed, is the virtual graduations that are happening. And I know you had all kinds of stress to get that through and to get that done. And the messages that you continue to send to the community and to the parents and to the seniors, they really made me stop and think, and I didn't have a kid in school. I don't, but the message was so heartfelt and sincere. And I think as I shared with you before we came on at 10, I had been over on Facebook and YouTube and I was watching the Luella Lions graduate, and I got to listen to the valedictorian and to the school president and some of the different youth speak. And I gotta tell you, I am looking forward to what they bring into this world because it was inspirational. Those kids are gonna rule the world. They're gonna rock it for us. So as long as we can all get together and leave it in good hands, as long as we steward it to them, I think we'll be good. So we just have to make sure that we do our thing. Sherry, can I ask you some of your key takeaways from leadership and change and that?
So 2 things. Obviously, Mary Elizabeth definitely has a much grander group because she is dealing with not only our children, but with the community, and the community definitely wants to make sure that we have excellent school system. But I have 2 things that I remind myself of every morning. I have a little sticky note that's hanging on my door that states, remember why you started. And every morning when I walk in, I have to say that to myself so that I can be reminded of why I did start. It wasn't because, hey, Henry County's here and I'm just doing it because it's out there. But I've been employed with Henry County. It'll be 18 years on June 24th, I think Wednesday of this week. And a lot of things have changed. And just growing up in the organization, understanding how our population has changed, how our community has changed, and how the makeup of our board has changed, really has been a pushing force for me to make sure that we continue to do greater things. Let's not continue to look back at how things were done in the past. Not to say that the past isn't history, because I do believe in history, but I also believe in moving forward. And one of the things that I try to preach to myself and to my children is a little quote by Wayne Dyer that says, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I think that's what we have to continue to push. Sometimes we are stuck in our old element of this is how we've done it and we're going to continue to do it that way. And it may have worked 10 years ago, but things are progressively changing and we have to learn how to adjust to that change. But we also have to realize, and I think it goes back to that equity and that inclusion, how do we meet those employees halfway that just aren't ready to change? How do we work with those employees within the means in which they're willing to work? And how do we make it where it's an environment where all enjoys? And so for me, it's definitely navigating through the different personalities, not only having 1,800 employees, but 6 elected officials who have very strong opinions about everything. And that's not a bad thing. It's just my opinion is here and this is where I want to be, and being able to navigate through that. And again, I go back, and I know the group may get tired of hearing this, but having the support from the 3 of you all that's on this call as well. Because sometimes we are so passionate about something that we can't see beyond that passion because we're so passionate about it. And so again, I just think being able to come to the table and have conversations, but also being able to recognize that all change may not be good. Some change is good, some change isn't good, but also listening to those that are surrounding you to hear from them, their opinions and their thoughts. And again, I certainly have to echo Mary Elizabeth's comments in terms of talking to your board members about their purpose, their mission. That was one of the things that we've strived to do here at the county, because we've never had a mission statement. We've never had goals identified. And so coming in as a new manager with new board members, with everybody having a lot of great ideas, identifying what those key ideas are and how we can move forward. We've coined Team Henry, which is our philosophy. We believe in teamwork, accountability, and we hold our staff members to that charge, meaning that's the same information that we're relaying to those that are doing business with the county. So again, if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you. And I've been very impressed watching you as well as the chair of Leadership Henry this year, and the way that you were able to make the changes necessary to get that program completed at the end of the year. So you're a great leader too. So thank you. Josh, a couple takeaways that you might have from making change or leading through change.
Thank you, Joe. And I think Sherry and Mary Elizabeth have done a really good job covering a lot of those areas. One thing for me personally coming into Henry County, and as I was going through the search process with the Development Authority Board, I've researched the Development Authority Board that we have. And we really have, kudos to our commission. They have really assembled a fantastic board with a lot of different various backgrounds and business backgrounds. But our chairman has really set a tone on communication within our group, has made us more efficient than we have ever been from an operational standpoint, so that we can, do our mission and our primary purpose, and that's the economic growth of Henry County. So if we have a good economy, all of our citizens have more opportunities that's out there, and we're stayed focused on that. But I really, I couldn't have asked for a better board. Within our staff, I challenge my staff to help me learn. I've got some millennials on our staff, and besides the IT stuff, help challenge me in other ways, but also from my standpoint, I want them to learn, I want them to grow, I want them to advance. And I think, from a managerial standpoint, I've always had this throughout my career with my staff. If they're growing and succeeding, whether long-term that's with us or they get an opportunity to move up somewhere else, that's a win for our organization. I have preached that. I have held the line on that. I've got a board who is supportive of that. We're looking for wins. And what makes us successful, especially during this time, has been the board setting the tone on the communication, setting the time of, data. Facts are your friends, as my chairman always stresses to us. And it has served us very well. So it has been a great experience. I'm looking forward to more years here in Henry County. Looking forward to more success in our community. But, the key thing is conversation, and we are in COVID, and we're not able to, sit down and have those in-person conversations that we're normally used to, but we've got to adapt, and we'll get there. I mean, but we got to keep working on it. It's a big, it's big ideas, big challenges, take big effort. We'll get there.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Thank you. I think that is the key to our success, is that the four of our organizations all have great leaders, but also are collaborative and able to support each other, even if it is trying to have these difficult conversations or trying to make change. I think that that's a benefit to the county that we're going to see as we move forward. So I want to thank you all for Carolyn. I want to thank you. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to wrap up and share any final thoughts.
I do not, Joe, but I do have a question that came
Yes.
through.
Yeah.
So a question here says, diversity and inclusion is important for various reasons. What plans or programs are in place to help the Board of Education members be more inclusive when decisions are being made that impact our community? Dr. Davis.
Carolyn. Yeah, I think our strategic plan really does lay out our community's perspective on what they expect out of schools. The responsibility for students to learn at high levels is a responsibility of the school system. Seeing an 11-point jump in the CCRPI, making us one of the top 5 performing districts in the region in just 2 short years is a big deal. But underneath that, the way that happened was because for the first time ever, all student group achievement gap targets that are set by the state were hit. 100% of them achieved. That's not meaning we've arrived, but the steps in the right direction on students learning at high levels are serious, and we are holding ourselves accountable to that. So the strategic plan, which the board will take action on at the July 15th meeting, is the next step to not just solely holding ourselves accountable to external state accountability metrics, but actually defining metrics that are important to our community. And I've started to actually look at that because, again, 8,000 individuals contributing to the strategic plan development process really gives the Board of Education exposure to the perspectives of our stakeholders. And of course, our members of the Board of Education participated in all of those 50 school councils, 50 faculty meetings, 5 town halls. Our Board of Education sees now more than ever the responsibility and opportunity to listen deeply and learn how to govern as a reflection of that. But the strategic plan needs to be in place to hold that standard to an even higher level than ever before. And I believe that there is a moment of opportunity to really say, when we talk about in Henry County schools, all 50 schools, opportunity, access, and outcomes for every student and every student group, what are we doing to hold ourselves accountable internally and not even before there are even external measures that we have to be motivated by. So I really am excited about getting much more narrow in the accountability on me as a superintendent, the executive leadership team, and then how that extends into our school leaders. And I believe that's the work that we're in the middle of. And we're just not done yet. Like, there's just real opportunity in Henry County schools to be the highest performing school system in the Metro Atlanta region. I mean, we are on the cusp of that, and students learning at the highest possible outcomes give them the greatest number of opportunities, and that is the job of the school system. And I feel really, really like this is our moment to make that transition.
Wonderful.
Sherry?
I'm sorry, Carolyn.
No, Joe asked me if I had any comments, you or
Okay.
I. And I didn't have any comments. I just wanted to pose that question.
Oh,
that
no,
you posted.
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Well, I thank you all. I want to put one last plug in for the first of the series of the community dialogue / book discussion, and it is Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. I know that Story on the Square has some in stock. I don't know if they're still in stock, but if you give them a call. But please, if you're out there and you're interested in having these conversations with us, join us Monday morning at 10. We'll do a similar community conversation around that book with Lincoln Parks, our chair-elect, and some of our, we're hoping for some faith-based leaders. I always stumble over that. I need to find something else to say. And as well as hopefully a law enforcement official to have a good conversation around talking to strangers. So I want to thank you all again. Carolyn, thank you so much for the work you do on DEI. Dr. Davis, Sherry, Josh, thank you for the support and the collaborative effort that you bring to the community. Josh, I'm going to ask you, I believe 2 weeks from now, you've got a topic for economic development. You want to share that topic with us?
Yeah, so in 2 weeks, we'll be doing a kind of give the community an update of what we're seeing economically, where Henry County's at this stage of the COVID-19 economic crisis recovery. So, please join us. I know Joe and his team will get some more information out here soon about that. But there's a lot of data that you don't see behind the headlines that though we are in a bad, we are in a bad spot economically, Henry County's position is not as bad as you think. And it gives us some, some hope and some things also that we need to be watching out for as a community economically going forward and get through this minor recession, as we'll call it right now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so that's 2 weeks from today at 10 a.m. We'll do it the same way with the Zoom and Facebook Live, and I hope to see all of you before that 2 weeks, but if not, have a safe week ahead, and I will be touching base. Thank you all.
Stay safe, y'all.
Thank you, you too.